If you're a leader or an aspiring leader in the business of lifelong learning, you're in the right place. I'm Celisa Steele.
And I'm Jeff Cobb, and this is the Leading Learning Podcast.
Siri, do you think human beings or machines are more intelligent?
It's your opinion that counts, Jeff.
That's great to hear, because that's exactly what we want to talk about today, is our opinion about artificial intelligence.
That's right. We really see artificial intelligence as one of the all-around biggest issues impacting the world, impacting humans, and of course, impacting the world of learning. And so we want to look at AI across 4 key areas in the customer engagement cycle, namely employment, marketing, then products and services, and finally, evaluation and impact.
And we know that artificial intelligence in general has been top of mind for so many listeners, so many of the people that we interact with. And so we thought highlighting these 4 areas might make it something that feels a little bit more manageable, give people a framework for how to think about it. And so the first of those that you mentioned, Celisa, in employment, I mean, this essentially is the market, or a big part of the market for learning, and artificial intelligence is undeniably changing that. I mean, we just know that the estimates are all over the map, but we know that artificial intelligence is going to eliminate some jobs. It's going to change the nature of others significantly. It's going to create new jobs. And of course, in every one of these cases, no matter how the numbers turn out in the end, it's going to impact learning and present challenges and opportunities.
And I think it's important to note that while there's going to be an impact, that there will be some jobs that are eliminated, that some jobs will have their nature changed and other new jobs will be created, that this is not going to be uniform. It's not that, we're going to lose X jobs, per sector, per industry, per profession. And so this is an area to really dig in and have to understand your audiences and what they're dealing with around what are the likely impacts. Where are you likely to have learners who are going to be faced with eliminated jobs and therefore going to need to kind of more completely retool? Where are you going to be dealing with learners that are going to have to learn new functions and new skills to fit in? And then, where are you going to be needing to train those learners for the new jobs that AI makes available?
Yeah, and I think it's a really important point to keep in mind that, AI, artificial intelligence, doesn't have to be equivalent to human intelligence. I think people have in mind, the perfect robot, the Turing test that you can talk to it and it's going to sound like a human talking back to you, feel like you're interacting with a human. That's not what's needed. What's needed is good enough to replace a component or significant components of what a human being can do. And of course, we're there in so many places already, and there really are no professions and industries that are going to be exempt from this. It's going to impact everybody. So, if you are a learning leader, if you're just a professional working in learning businesses, you need to be, tracking news of artificial intelligence developments in general and considering the implications that, as you were saying, that they might have for your field or industry. And I'd say, too, you really need to maintain close relationships with employers, as well as, academics and others in your field who are really studying what's going on and finding out from them, where is automation likely to happen? Where is artificial intelligence, robotics likely to play a role and do what you were talking about, Celisa, eliminate some jobs, change the nature of jobs, create new jobs, so that you're tuned in for where that new education and training is going to be needed.
And so that's a quick look at employment. And I think that employment, the impact on jobs, is where so much of the media attention around AI is focused. That's what we're reading about.
That's the headlines, yeah.
And so, that's something that you definitely have to be aware of. Jeff, you just offered a few ways to kind of keep up on that, tracking the news, having those close relationships with employers and academics, because that's giving you a sense of what your learners need. I mean, that is in essence a part of you understanding your market. And so let's talk a little bit more about marketing, which is the second area that we really wanted to focus on. And AI is definitely having its impact on marketing already. Beginning with just sort of simple algorithms that are automating a lot of what's happening, all the way to much deeper forms of personalizing the marketing, so that the when, the where, and the how a prospect interacts and intersects with potential learning opportunities. All of that is really being changed and getting much more targeted. And so this, AI is changing how you can attract new prospects, but it also is impacting your ongoing engagement with existing customers.
Yeah, and if you are out there tracking the marketing blogosphere at all, the people who are out there writing about what's going on in the marketing world, and we do this as part of just keeping up with what's going on out there that might impact learning businesses, you'll see that AI is something that's just being written about all over the place. It's much more of a buzz topic there than in just about any other industry other than possibly manufacturing right now. So. And again, we've said this before, that the correspondence between marketing and education is it's just really tight. You can think of education as a strategy for learning, and you can think of marketing as a strategy for buying or owning. And in both cases, the goal is to change knowledge, to change behavior, to lead people to that outcome. So they're incredibly similar. So, when you hear about personalization in marketing, of course, that kind of personalization, and we'll talk about this in a minute, is going to apply to learning. When you talk about really understanding your customer needs, well, your customer in a learning business is your learner. So there's just all sorts of overlap. And I mean, the examples abound, but some obvious ones that learning businesses can and should embrace right away are things like ad targeting and retargeting. I mean, this is getting really, really sophisticated at this point.
Really sophisticated, but also really easy.
Easy and frankly a little creepy at times too. What's actually possible, but I mean, for example, in Facebook right now they have the concept of a lookalike audience. You can upload your email list to Facebook, and it's going to find other people on Facebook who have similar characteristics to your current audience. And if you do a page update or a post on Facebook and then boost that post, it's going to put it in front of those people, and it's not even going to feel like an ad anymore. It's going to feel like just the type of thing that they would usually read in their feed on Facebook. That's becoming incredibly common. So, and that's because of machine learning. It's learning about your customers, and then it's, drawing the correspondences to other people on Facebook to put your content in front of them.
Well, and I'll just highlight a couple other kind of terms buried in what you were just providing as an example there around Facebook. I mean, this is segmentation, right? AI is helping you really be able to identify your audience or sub-audiences, and then really develop messaging that's specific to those really small segments. Because when you're dealing with AI, it doesn't matter. It's not that you have to sort of have an audience of a certain size, a segment of a certain size before it, quote, makes sense to do a targeted message for it. Once you're working in the AI realm, it can tweak those variables very easily, even for really hyper niche customer segments. And then, one of the other areas where I think it's really interesting what's going on with marketing and AI is around content curation. And curation is obviously something that we've spent a lot of time talking about. And again, this feeds into what I was just talking about, segmentation. I mean, when you're able to leverage AI for the content curation, again, you can really get hyper specific. You don't have to kind of curate, across the board for all of your members or all of your learners. You can begin to get more personalized, more segmented, so that you're really giving that customer, that learner, information and resources that really align with what they're interested in or what they need.
And this all aligns with our concept of the value ramp, basically. And we talk about, early on in the engagement with a prospective learner, prospective customer, providing them value that's really relevant to them, that then basically leads them along the path towards the higher value and higher priced type offerings that you charge for as learning events. So being able to curate content in that way as you're attracting them as a prospect, and then to keep them engaged over time. And so, a simple application of that we're seeing more and more of is newsletters that are being curated through artificial intelligence. So like Rasa.io is getting a presence now doing this, where it's really learning based on each individual subscriber and what that person clicks on each time she receives a newsletter, and then adjusting the next time and helping to feed more and more relevant content over time, which of course just keeps that person coming back to you. And that's all free content in a newsletter. Of course, you can also have paid newsletters, but that builds the authority, it builds the brand, it builds the trust, it paves the path to actual participation in paid learning experiences.
And speaking of paid learning experiences, I think it would be good for us to touch on dynamic pricing and what is happening there that artificial intelligence is helping to enable.
Yeah, and pricing is always a challenge for organizations, how to set the right price. We've known for a long time now that, for example, in the airline industry, that ticket prices are changing all the time based on demand, based on how often you've visited the site and what they know about you, your demographics and your buying habits. And when you're sitting on an airplane, the person sitting next to you probably did not pay the same price for the ticket. They may have paid more, they may have paid less. And people have different opinions about that, but it really can help to level the playing field in a lot of ways. I'm thinking particularly if you're an international organization and you need to be able to strike pricing parity based on where a person is, the socioeconomic demographics that are associated with that person. So I think we're going to start to see the e-commerce engines that are driving a lot of the learning platforms that are responsible for course sales, event sales, those sorts of things, bringing in some dynamic pricing elements and being able to adjust price, not just give that sort of flat discount across everybody with no segmentation that really tends to erode margins, but to discount or not, really based on who that user is, how they value you, where they are, all those factors that artificial intelligence can take into account.
And so, we started off talking about the impact of AI on employment. We've just now been talking about the impact of AI on marketing. I want to mention that we have some resources, some articles that we'll link to in the show notes for this episode, just to give you a little bit more insight into kind of what's going on and how some of these applications of AI are playing out. So be sure and check out the show notes if you're interested in learning more about all of these. And you can find the show notes for this episode at leadinglearning.com/episode 173.
And so we've talked about employment, or essentially kind of the market environment for learning, and how AI is obviously going to have a big impact, already is having a big impact on that. We've talked about marketing, and we've spent a pretty good bit of time there because, like we were saying, if you're going to study one thing as a learning leader, as a learning business professional, studying what's going on in marketing and learning from that is one of the best things you can be doing right now. So taking some of those examples to heart that we just covered. But now, there's the actual product, the service, the delivery of learning. And of course, artificial intelligence is going to impact that as well, and is already starting to.
Absolutely. So we see AI impacting how learning is delivered, how it's facilitated, how it's supported. And I think one thing to emphasize is that AI really is, finally bringing to bear that promise of personalized learning, that sort of holy grail of being able to present learners with the right learning experiences, or the right even elements from within learning experiences, contextualizing that learning, curating related content. All of that becomes much more realistic when you're, not doing it as an intensive, human-based effort, but when you're able to leverage AI so that that's happening dynamically and automatically.
And I think AI is going to be really helpful with things like, social learning and informal learning, which, those have traditionally been hard to track and analyze. I think, along with artificial intelligence gaining ground, we're starting to see many more people say that XAPI, the Experience API, is starting to get some traction now, which of course is the the follow-on to SCORM, people think is going to replace SCORM over time, and it allows data to be gathered from outside of just a learning management system. It can be gathered from various places across the web, the internet, but then you need to be able to work with that data in a meaningful way to analyze it and draw some conclusions from it. And artificial intelligence really is going to be the key to doing that, and it's going to be the key to taking that data, taking traditional LMS data, and figuring out really what's next. Because artificial intelligence is going to really create great potential for following up and for reinforcing learning in ways that have just been difficult to do up until now. Even with some of the automation we have, it's still fairly manual. Artificial intelligence will help to take the manual out of it and really make it an automated process truly.
And, we'll note that there are now products that are coming out and hitting the market that have AI kind of baked into them. We used Siri at the beginning of this episode. That's this AI assistant that most of us have, in one form or another in our pocket or via our browser or laptop. And there are other products coming out that, are specifically focused on learning design and development, things that are taking content and turning them into quizzes and assessments, or that are actually, taking kind of source materials and creating course experiences. And so, I haven't spent a lot of time with those, products and services out there, but I think it's worth noting that even if, they only kind of produce a not terribly exciting version of a quiz or assessment or a course, just the fact that if you could get to a quick version, a version, 1.0 really quickly, just imagine what the time savings that could be, for your design and development team.
Now, and the value proposition that some of these companies are putting out there, and we'll link to a couple things like Wildfire, which is taking content and rapidly turning it into courses. Platforms like Quillions, which is generating assessment questions. The developers of these tools are specifically referencing that it cuts down on subject matter expert time, and this is another one of those jobs being impacted potentially. But that's often a pain point, an operational pain point for learning businesses, whether it's for creating courses or for having to deal with creating question banks. And as you were saying, Celisa, if you can get just a good solid first pass at the content for a course or at the question bank that you need for a certification, for example, that can be a huge leg up. It can make things go much faster. It can cut cost. It can just make things much, much more efficient. And we're going to be there pretty rapidly, I think. As you're saying, we don't quite know the quality levels yet. I do know that Wildfire has actually won an award, an e-learning award for content that came out of it. And we'll link to that as well. But this type of stuff, dealing with structured questions, dealing with taking text and transferring it into sort of an active learning context, that's well within the reach of current AI. So, we're not saying go out and run out and invest in this stuff immediately, but it's coming fast. So definitely be paying attention to it.
Well, and be aware of where it already exists in the tools that you're using. We know, for example, we use SurveyMonkey for some of our assessments and surveys, and we know that it has its text analysis that it'll run on open-ended responses, and that can be really helpful in getting that sort of quick sense of top issues or ideas that come out of those responses. So again, it's just about tuning in and being aware of kind of where AI already is playing a role in what you're doing, and then beginning to imagine what the impact of that will be as it further expands, as it improves and gets even better.
And since we're talking about AI helping to create content, this might be a good time to mention another fantastic solution for your learning content, and that's one of our sponsors for this quarter, Blue Sky eLearn. Blue Sky eLearn is the creator of the Path Learning Management System, an award-winning cloud-based learning solution that allows organizations to easily deliver, track, and monetize valuable education and event content online. Blue Sky also provides webinar and webcast services, helping you maximize your content and create deeper engagement with your audience across the world. To find out more about Blue Sky eLearn and everything they offer, visit leadinglearning.com/bluesky.
And we do encourage you to visit that link, leadinglearning.com/blue sky. And with that, we want to turn to the fourth and final area that we wanted to cover in this customer engagement cycle. So we've talked about employment, we've talked about marketing, we've talked about products and services. And the last area we want to touch on is evaluation and impact. And AI is definitely having a big role to play here. AI is really changing our ability to analyze and to then adapt and adjust based on the analysis. So a lot of the same types of algorithms that are enabling platforms like Facebook and LinkedIn to better look at their members and users and draw conclusions about their behavior, those same types of algorithms are going to enable learning businesses to analyze the behaviors of their learners at the aggregate level, so sort of across all of your learners, but also at the group level. So some of those specific segments or demographics or a particular cohort. And then, of course, too, as we're saying, even at that individual level, getting all the way down to just that one specific learner. And of course, all of this is going to help by producing data that's going to turn into knowledge that's going to allow us to develop better learning products and services, deliver those learning products and services better by looking at things like the role that facilitators and instructors and presenters are playing, and then too, just understanding the overall impact by being able to ask those questions of learners about how they are applying what they've learned, and even getting at some indirect things where we're not necessarily just asking those questions of the learners, but looking at what they actually go out and do.
And we've talked about that word impact so many times, talked about it, written about it, and that we see what's really an impact imperative at this point, that there's so much going on out there, so many options for learners, for the employers and other decision makers that are helping to foot the bill for education and training, that increasingly it is going to be imperative that you can show your learning is having an impact, that it's actually moving the dial, that when people, particularly if they're paying to go through it, to engage with the learning experiences you create, that they're achieving outcomes that do, in fact, contribute to their ability to do their job better, to advance in their career. And the learners want to see that. We've heard that from learners. We've seen it in many survey results. And of course, the employers want to see it, particularly if they're footing the bill for the education and training. And so, yeah, as you're saying, Celisa, artificial intelligence is... we're collecting a ton of data now, and this is what we need to be able to work with that data.
Well, yeah, and one of the things that I find especially interesting about, I think, the impact of AI on data analysis is that I feel like we're moving more into being able to look at leading indicators versus lagging indicators. So really being able to get into more of the predictive view of what's happening. And actually that was part of the conversation that I had in a recent episode with Gary Kokens. We'll make sure to link back to that episode that you have it there. But because you can kind of have AI looking at data as it's coming in and looking at it such a huge volume of data as well, you can begin to have some of these insights much earlier on. So you don't have to necessarily wait for a post-mortem or some somewhat arbitrarily defined point where you're going to say, after a year-long pilot, we're going to stop and look at data. You can be looking at it all along the way as it's coming in, making those adjustments as necessary. And then AI is even going to get better, I think, beyond not only just sort of looking at predictive factors, but also getting to that prescriptive mode where it's going to be saying, based on this, here's what you should be doing.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, moving from analysis to diagnosis to predictive to prescriptive, as you're saying. And, and of course, if you're a leader in the midst of all of this, it's going to be increasingly involved in decision making, the critical role that so many leaders are involved in, your personal decision making and working with your teams to make decisions. And AI is going to be a partner in doing that in many ways going forward.
And so now seems like a great time to mention a sponsor for our podcast this quarter, Authentic Learning Labs. Authentic Learning Labs is an education company seeking to bring complementary tech and services to empower publishers and L&D organizations to help elevate their programs. The company leverages technology like AI, data analytics, and advanced embeddable API-based services to complement existing initiatives, offering capabilities that are typically out of reach for resource-stretched groups or growing programs needing to scale. Find out more at leadinglearning.com/authentic.
Definitely do check out what Authentic Learning Labs is doing. They really have some cool stuff going on with being able to take data and put it into a form that is visual and that you can use for the sort of decision making that we were just talking about. And so that's the evaluation and impact side of things. So we've talked about employment. Or sort of just the market in general is one key area to look at relative to artificial intelligence. We talked about marketing itself, how you're going to go out there and connect with and engage and convert your prospective learners. We've talked about your products and services, so delivery and facilitation and following up on your learning experiences and the role that artificial intelligence can play there. And then finally, again, this evaluation and impact area. And maybe we should wrap up with just a few of the implications that we're seeing for this, and one certainly is that learner expectations are already shifting significantly, regardless of whether they're aware of the role that artificial intelligence is playing in their lives. So this is already impacting people, basically. And if you're waiting for your learners to say, "Oh, give me artificial intelligence," it's probably not going to happen. You can't expect them to say that. You have to look at how things are shifting in your industry, at the behavior of the learners, at your employers and decision makers, and at your own desired learning and business outcomes. And from that, determine what role artificial intelligence reasonably can play for your learning business.
Well, and I think this gets back to something that we always try to stress, as much as we are focused on the role that technology can play in learning and in learning businesses, we really always see technology as a means to an end. We don't want technology to be that tail wagging the dog. And so it really is thinking about the challenges and opportunities that you face as a learning business, that your learners are facing, and then really thinking critically about whether or not AI is going to have an impact on those challenges or opportunities, or be a way to address those challenges and opportunities. So it's your learners aren't going to be saying, "Hey, we want AI," and you also shouldn't be kind of just saying, "Oh, we need to do something with AI." It's got to be this balance of really thinking about what makes sense.
Right, definitely. And at the same time, you do have to recognize that this is an area where there likely will be a significant first mover advantage, at least in the kind of right areas. So, if you can get the right AI in place around the right content, and taking into account the things you were just talking about, Celisa, if you do that, and if you can start making that happen early, you'll start to build an advantage that's going to be difficult for others to erode. Because think again about what the promise of AI is. It's about really understanding, knowing your audience, the market you're trying to serve, really being able to connect with that audience in a very personalized way, really being able to deliver learning in a way that is going to very tightly align with and meet the needs of the learners, of the other decision makers who are involved, employers being a big one, and then being able to show that you've actually done that. And if within your particular field or industry you're able to move rapidly to do that, that's hard to catch up with. I mean, that's the equivalent of what Amazon has done in the retail space in general, and it's darned hard to catch Amazon at this point. There's going to be, I think, quite a bit of that going on in niche after niche because of what artificial intelligence is making available.
So I think the take-home message is tune in to AI, be out there reading, following what's happening in general, but also with that specific lens on your learners, your industry, your profession, really trying to think about the implications and make those connections so that you can get out there, make some choices, start taking advantage, be in that first mover advantage situation.
definitely a lot to think about, and a lot to figure out, what to take action on sooner rather than later. And we'd love to hear your perspectives on this. We know so many people are wrestling with artificial intelligence from many different angles. What plans do you have? What's spurring those plans? What's preventing you from embracing artificial intelligence right now? Please come and comment. You can find the show notes for this episode at leadinglearning.com/episode 173, and you can always comment at the bottom of the show notes. There's an area to do that. You can always email us at leadinglearning@tagoras.com. We'd love to hear from you, though, about your perspective and what you're doing or not doing about artificial intelligence.
When you go check out the show notes, you're going to see various options for subscribing to the podcast. And if you're getting value out of what you hear, Jeff and I would be truly grateful if you would subscribe, as it helps us to get some data on the impact of what we're doing.
And we'd also be grateful if you take just a minute to give us a rating on iTunes. Just go to leadinglearning.com/iTunes, or you can do this on another service if you use some other way of getting the podcast. But if you go to leadinglearning.com/iTunes, that'll put you in the right place for the Apple service. And Celisa and I mean, we personally appreciate your rating and review, but then on top of that, those reviews and ratings play an important role in helping the podcast show up when people search for content on learning and leading and on being in the learning business. And of course, the reason it pops up is there's the machine back there grinding away and presenting that relevant data to searchers.
And please do be sure to visit our sponsors for this quarter. You can find out about Authentic Learning Labs at leadinglearning.com/authentic. And you can find out what Blue Sky eLearn has to offer at leadinglearning.com/bluesky.
Finally, consider telling others about the podcast. You can send a tweet by going to leadinglearning.com/share. And you can also like us on Facebook at facebook.com/leadinglifelonglearning. And of course, you can share us with others there as well. However you do it, please do help to share the good word about leading learning.
Thanks again, and see you next time on the Leading Learning Podcast.